Hi everyone, good morning. I'm doing my John Maxwell and I'm starting a new chapter in this book today. I am a speaker with John Maxwell and I'm using this to try to build up my ministry work as well as to get speaking engagements. So I'm on a new chapter today and the chapter is on servanthood. The case study today is for 1 Samuel 30, and it's verses 1 to 31. It's basically showing us how David stands up for the men who are left behind. When they go into battle, some of the men are exhausted and they have to stay behind. So it shows us how David, first of all, looks after the captive, and then when they get the plunder, he divides it, including with the ones who are left behind. The study question for today is, do you consider David's decision to share the plunder equally to be fair and just, or generous and indulgent? So it was fair of him to share it with them equally, because by doing so, he won favor with his troops and with the people. It's not fair to punish those who are exhausted, who have done their work, and to not give them their share of what comes, the reward that comes for everybody else. So that's why you'll find that even with our veterans in Canada, they are not forgotten, they are not left behind. They are still included, they're honored, they're celebrated, because they've done the work that has given us our freedom. And that's what we call disciplined thinking. Because if David wasn't disciplined, he would not have taken care of those who were left behind. He would have only taken care of those who were still with him, who were going into battle, and who had actually captured the land and whatever they had taken. The second question is, what might have motivated David to make that decision? And why do you think he sent some of the plunder to the elders of Judah? So David had to be disciplined in his emotions. He had to be fair to everybody, or they would have turned against him. The elders were the ones who had set the example for him, so he would have wanted them to have a share in the reward. He wouldn't have wanted to see the elders suffering or the elders not being taken care of. And that's something, again, that's important in Canada. There's a lot of support put in place for the elders, for people when they retire. It is different when you come here and you haven't worked here, because you don't get the same benefits, because it's supposed to be our responsibility, the one who brings in our elders, to take care of them. Unfortunately, we are in a situation in Canada where you can't even get one job for yourself, and getting any kind of loans or support for businesses like I'm doing my speaking is very, very hard. So we have to keep forging ahead, and we have to keep disciplined in our emotions. And like David, we don't forget about the elders, because they set the example for us, and we in turn have to do for others who are coming after us, and also take care of them. But there's give and take in that relationship. The elders didn't forget about David either. And the third question is, why do you think the victorious fighting men declared the additional flocks and herds to be David's plunder? Why didn't David take that to heart and keep everything for himself? Because he was their leader. The battle wasn't fought alone, but they were fighting under him. So they had to take disciplined action, and they had to follow his direction. So the army fought for him. And that's true of all our countries. The armies fight on behalf of the leaders. They're under their command, they're under their control. It wouldn't have been fair for him to take everything and keep it for himself. And that's why you see there's revolts sometimes in governments, in countries, when the leaders take everything that is good and they keep it for themselves, and they don't share it with the nation, or they don't share it with those who are working for them. And that happens too in companies, where there's big divides between the ones who are earning the most and the ones who are earning the least. There'll be a revolt against that, because people will be like, well, what are we working for? If we're working just to make you rich and make the shareholders rich, then what is in it for us? So David protected himself with that disciplined action by making sure that he didn't keep everything for himself. And the last question is, how would you describe David's leadership skill and style in this passage? How did he handle the discovery that their families had been taken? How did he handle the battle? How did he handle the dispute between the 400 men and the 200 who stayed behind? How did he handle relations with people in the area? So he showed himself to be a strong leader, but also a caring and supportive one, even for the one who was taken into captive. He made sure that they gave him something to eat and that he was okay. And then he asked him what happened to the people so that he could go and rescue them. And this Egyptian told him that the master had abandoned him, because he asked him, whose are you? So that's how they used to identify who people belong to, because the slaves belong to people, even in a household, or even like today where they say to us, who are you working for? That's how they identify, and they assign you to like who you're with. And then he went after the raiding party once he found out that the families had been taken, and he fought for the families. He was fair to those who had stayed behind and to those who had come with him. When he returned to those he had left behind, he asked them how they were, because they were exhausted when he had left them behind. So he wanted to know how they were. He wasn't only interested in the battle and in what he had taken for himself. He cared about his army, both the ones who fought with him and the ones who were left behind. And he built relationships with people in the area by sharing what he had. And that goes for not only the way he was with people, but also with sharing the spoils of whatever he had captured. And that's true of our leaders today. So you'll find that with the organizations I support, some of the Catholic communities are following me on Twitter. Some of the organizations I volunteer with are following me on Twitter, and some of them are not. So for me, that's an indication of who's interested in my social media, what I'm saying on social media, who's interested in me, in getting to know what my views are, and who isn't. Because some organizations are only interested in themselves, or some people are only interested in their own views and what they are thinking, or what they want, the message they want to be put across. They're not interested in who is volunteering with them, getting to know them. And it's the same of people that we support, whether it's with our political leaders, our MPs who are selected. So my MP, Robin Martin, she is connected with me on LinkedIn. She's stepping down. We have a new person now, but she connected with me so she could see my posts. She could see what my views were. And she also got to know me a little bit because she came to my parish. So there's a difference there between somebody who say like Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau's not following me on X or any of the other leaders. That shows you the difference in something happening at the local level and something happening at the, just you're one of thousands, you're just a number. So that's the way I look at it. It's the same way with, we used to have Julie, who supports Novak. She used to organize like group meetings for us where we could join in, and she would give us updates about what he was doing, where he was playing. When he used to play in certain areas, she used to organize meet and greets for him to meet up with his fans. So she stepped down for a while because people were harassing her and being nasty on social media. But that's what happens when you have a key person, a key contact that people can come to, people can go to get to know the leader or to get to know the tennis player. That's what happens. And sometimes people do get to know you. They might not follow you back on social media, but I know, like with Belinda Benchik, she knows who I am because I follow her on social media. When she came to play tennis here in Canada, she smiled at me, she waved, she knew who I was. And a lot of the tennis community know who I am because when I go to watch the tennis, they do tell them that, yeah, she's here, she came to watch. So I appreciate that they know that I like tennis, and some of the players also know who I am, the Canadian tennis players. So that's nice for me. But again, it's about give and take. It's not just about the people at the top don't stay at the top. They only stay at the top if they are serving the people and if they care about the people who are helping them to stay where they are. And even with tennis players, if they don't care about us as their fans, people will find other people to support. That's just the way it is. So this is just one example. It's war, which is not my thing, but it's good examples that we can look at about David's leadership in the army, how he fought, what type of a leader he was, and how that they call it servant leadership because you're serving people, you're helping people. That's basically what it is. And so we learn that from our own families. We learn that in our communities. I was very fortunate or very blessed, I would say, in Kwekwe, where I grew up in Zimbabwe, because I didn't, there's this thing now in Zimbabwe, when I watch the social media, a lot of the women are saying that the people holding them back are their husbands. And I think we were blessed because we didn't encounter that. In our families and in our communities, husbands and wives were equal. People set up partnerships, and the women did what they wanted, and we did what we wanted. The men never controlled us and told us what to do. The same with my grandparents. My grandmother had her own business as an educated woman. She was a seamstress. She took a course in dressmaking, and she had her own business, and my grandfather had his own business, and then they came together, and they formed a partnership, a limited liability company. So I think it impacts you depending on how your view of life changes. There's another thing, like here in Canada, all the women say, oh, I have to ask my husband, or I want to check with my husband. Even like sometimes I'm shopping and I go to buy a lipstick or something, and sometimes the women will say, oh, you like that? I said, yeah. And they're like, are you buying it? I'm like, I don't know, I haven't decided. And they're like, oh, I like this, but I want to check with my husband. So it's different because I guess with me, with my grandmother, she never did that. She just she bought what she wanted, and my grandfather liked it. Whatever it was, whatever she wanted was fine. So I think about them a lot, and I think about how I grew up and how different it is to here. And I miss my grandparents because it's very hard when you come from that kind of culture where you've been empowered, where you're making your own decisions and people are not telling you what to do, to come into this culture. So it's very different, very, very different. And then you lose your confidence because then it's like everything you do is wrong. Why did you do this? Who told you to do this? Why did you do that? Who told you to do that? Do it this way. Don't do it that way. So in the end, it's like, you know what, just tell me what to do, because whatever I do, it's going to be the wrong thing for you. So it's very different. And because we grew up in a business, my grandparents' business and my dad's business, and we were always involved in our communities, in making decisions. We were the ones who were organizing the events. And from young ages, even in the church, I used to put the crib together. I used to put up the Christmas decorations. So I was always in a decision-making capacity. And I was paid well wherever I worked. Whereas here, I'm always in minimum wage, menial jobs, short-term contracts. So it's very disheartening. But I keep my faith, and I do whatever I can when I do get those opportunities to lead and to organize. I do take them. And that's why I'm doing my John Maxwell, so I can have something of my own. Because at the end of the day, that's what I want. That's what I always wanted, is something of my own that I can build up. And that's why I did the spiritual direction. Unfortunately, I didn't get the support that I needed, like some of my friends in South Africa, to have my own income coming in, to be able to travel, to go see some of the places like in Ireland or Scotland or Wales where the Jesuits have retreat centers. So I do whatever I can, and I serve the community around me in whichever way I can. And that's what we all have to do. And the different examples that are given here are good, because we take care of those who are with us on the journey, but we don't forget about those who were left behind. It's like now with me, I'm not working, but I try to keep active on social media. I do what I can to help the political parties, and I take responsibility for my own life. I'm not just sitting at home not applying for jobs. I apply for jobs every day. I put my resume out every day. I look at recruiters' websites every day. So it's tough right now in Canada, but I keep my faith, and I hope that helps people. And if you do know of anyone looking for a speaker or a facilitator, somebody who can help with ministry or administration, then get in touch with me. And it doesn't have to be here. It can be in Zimbabwe. It can be in other places in the world. But of course, if I go back, I'll be going back as a Canadian, because I haven't lived in Zimbabwe for a long, long time. But my roots are Indian, and I would be happy to do it if they're looking for somebody that's interested in learning and growing, and that's interested in helping to make things better.